It was a dreary, rainy night, and I was holed up in my apartment, glad to be home after a long, stressful day at work. The rain hammered against the windows, creating a soothing yet eerie backdrop to my evening. I had just settled onto the couch with a cup of tea and a good book, when a loud knock echoed through the apartment, making me jump. I wasn't expecting anyone, especially not at this hour. I glanced at the clock. It was past 11 p.m. My neighborhood was usually quiet, and visitors at this time were rare. Hesitant, I set my book aside and walked to the door. I peered through the peephole, but the porch light was flickering, casting strange shadows. I couldn't see anyone clearly. "Who's there?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. There was no response, just the relentless sound of the rain. I waited a few moments, then called out again, louder this time. "Who is it?" Silence. I felt a chill run down my spine. Maybe it was just a prank, I thought. Kids messing around. I decided to ignore it, and return to the couch, but my unease lingered. I picked up my book, but my eyes kept darting to the door, expecting another knock. Minutes passed, and I started to relax again when the knock came once more. This time, it was louder and more insistent. My heart raced as I approached the door again. I checked the peephole. Still nothing. The flickering light made it hard to see anything clearly. Summoning my courage, I unlocked the door and opened it a crack. The cold, wet air rushed in, but there was no one there. Just the empty porch and the pounding rain. I stepped outside, looking left and right, but the street was deserted. As I turned to go back inside, I noticed something on the doormat, a small, waterlogged envelope. Curiosity got the better of me. I picked it up, and quickly went back inside, locking the door behind me. The envelope was plain, with no markings except my name, scrawled in a hurried, almost frantic script. I opened it, and a single piece of paper fell out. The message was short and chilling: "Do not open the door." My heart pounded in my chest. Someone had left this message just moments ago, and it was a warning. But against what? I looked around the apartment, suddenly feeling very vulnerable. I checked the windows and the back door, making sure they were locked. As I sat back down, trying to make sense of the situation, there was another knock. This time, it was softer, almost gentle, but no less terrifying. I froze, the note's warning echoing in my mind. I stood, creeping towards the door, my eyes fixed on it as if expecting it to burst open at any moment. I reached the door and listened. I could hear the rain, but nothing else. No shuffling footsteps, no whispers, just the knock, soft and persistent. I took a deep breath and peered through the peephole one last time. The light flickered, casting a brief, shadowy figure before everything went dark. The power went out, plunging the apartment into complete darkness. My phone's flashlight barely cut through the blackness as I backed away from the door. The knocking continued, growing louder, more urgent. Panic gripped me, and I retreated to the bedroom, locking the door and hiding in the corner with my phone clutched tightly. I sat there for what felt like hours, listening to the relentless knocking. Finally, as dawn broke, the knocking stopped. The rain had ceased, and the first light of day seeped through the curtains. I cautiously emerged, my entire body trembling. I never found out who knocked on my door that rainy night, or why they left that note. The experience left me shaken, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something malevolent had been at my doorstep. From that night on, I always kept my doors and windows securely locked, and never ignored a strange knock on the door. I've always considered my neighborhood safe. It's a cozy suburb where everyone knows each other, and the streets are lined with trees and neatly trimmed lawns. But that sense of security shattered one fateful evening. It was a chilly autumn night, and I had just returned from my friend's house. The air was crisp, and the streets were unusually quiet. I parked my car and decided to take a short walk before heading inside, hoping the fresh air would clear my mind after a long day. As I walked down the dimly lit street, the only sound was the crunching of leaves under my feet. I'd made it about halfway down the block when I noticed something odd. A shadowy figure was standing under a street light at the end of the street, barely visible in the flickering light. My heart skipped a beat, but I told myself it was just a neighbor out for a walk. As I got closer, the figure didn't move, didn't acknowledge me, just stood there, watching. Trying to shake off the unease, I turned down a side street, hoping to avoid any confrontation. That's when I heard the footsteps behind me, slow and deliberate. I quickened my pace, the sound of my heartbeat thudding in my ears. I glanced back, and the figure was there, closer now, moving with a strange, unsettling gait. Panic surged through me. I pulled out my phone to call for help, but my hands were shaking so badly that I could barely dial. Just as I managed to get the number in, the footsteps grew faster. I turned around fully, and the figure was almost upon me. In the dim light, I could make out a hooded figure, face obscured by shadows. Before I could react, they lunged at me. I stumbled backward, my phone clattering to the ground. The figure grabbed me, pushing me against a fence. I struggled, kicking and shouting, hoping someone, anyone, would hear and come to my aid. The attacker's grip was strong, and a cold, metallic object pressed against my neck, a knife. "Give me your wallet," a harsh voice demanded. My mind raced. I knew I had to comply, but my wallet was in my car. "It's in my car," I stammered, hoping they wouldn't notice my fear. The figure hesitated, then dragged me back toward my car, the knife never leaving my throat. As we approached my car, the street was still eerily empty. I fumbled with my keys, unlocking the door with trembling hands. I reached inside and grabbed my wallet, handing it over. The figure snatched it, rifling through the contents. For a moment, I thought they might just take the wallet and leave, but then their eyes locked on mine, and I saw something dark and malicious in their gaze. "You saw my face," they hissed, raising the knife. My heart pounded, and I knew I had to do something, anything, to survive. Summoning every ounce of courage, I swung my car door open as hard as I could, catching the attacker off guard. They stumbled back, and I took my chance. I bolted, running down the street, screaming for help. By some miracle, a porch light flicked on, and a neighbor stepped outside, alarmed by the commotion. My attacker hesitated, then turned and fled into the darkness. I collapsed onto the neighbor's lawn, gasping for breath, adrenaline coursing through my veins. The police arrived soon after, and I gave my statement, still shaking from the ordeal. They assured me they would do everything they could to find the attacker, but as I sat there, wrapped in a blanket, I couldn't shake the feeling of vulnerability that had settled deep within me. The neighborhood no longer felt safe. The familiar streets now held shadows that could hide any threat. I learned that night how fragile our sense of security truly is, and how quickly it can be shattered by the darkness that lurks just beyond the light.
It was a late evening in early October when it happened. I had just finished a long day at work and decided to take a different route home. The usual route was under construction, so I found myself driving through a part of town I rarely visited, a quiet, almost forgotten neighborhood with narrow streets and old houses. The air was crisp, and the sun had set, casting the streets in a gloomy twilight. As I drove, I noticed a stray dog wandering near the side of the road. At first glance, it seemed like any other stray, mangy, thin and forlorn, but something about it made me uneasy. Its fur was patchy and mottled, with what appeared to be scars or sores marring its skin. It moved with a strange, almost deliberate grace, its eyes glowing eerily in the dim light of my car's headlights. I tried to shake off the unease and continued driving, but as I turned onto my street, I saw the dog again. It was standing at the entrance to my driveway, as if waiting for me. I parked the car and stepped out cautiously, my eyes never leaving the animal. It watched me with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. I felt a primal fear I couldn't explain. I decided to ignore it and hurried inside, locking the door behind me. I peered out the window, but the dog had vanished. I tried to relax, chalking it up to an overactive imagination. After all, it was just a dog, right? I settled on the couch and turned on the TV, trying to distract myself from the lingering sense of dread. A few hours later, I heard a scratching sound at the back door. My heart pounded as I got up to investigate. I cautiously opened the blinds and nearly jumped out of my skin. There it was, the same dog, its eyes glowing a sinister yellow in the darkness. It was scratching at the door, almost methodically, as if it knew exactly how to get in. I backed away, my mind racing. What was it after? Why was it here? I grabbed a broom, the closest thing I could find to a weapon, and cautiously opened the door just a crack. The dog stood there, its eyes fixed on me, unblinking. It growled low in its throat, a sound that resonated deep within my bones. I swung the broom, trying to scare it away, but it dodged with uncanny agility and lunged at the door, forcing it open. The broom clattered to the floor as I stumbled backward, barely managing to slam the door shut before the dog could get inside. My heart was pounding, and I could hear the beast snarling and scratching at the door. I ran to the living room and grabbed my phone, dialing 911 with trembling fingers. The operator assured me that help was on the way, but it felt like an eternity before I heard the distant wail of sirens. The dog continued its assault on the door, and I could hear it snuffling and growling, as if it were trying to find a way in. When the police finally arrived, the dog vanished into the night as quickly as it had appeared, leaving only the marks of its claws on the door as evidence of its existence. The officers were skeptical when I explained what had happened. They searched the area but found no trace of the dog. They suggested it was just a stray, maybe rabid, and advised me to stay inside and keep my doors locked. But I knew there was something more to that creature. It wasn't just a wild dog, it was something far more sinister. The days that followed were filled with anxiety. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every time I stepped outside, I half expected to see those glowing eyes staring at me from the shadows. I installed new locks and even bought a security camera, but nothing could erase the memory of that night. Even now, I can't walk through my neighborhood without feeling a knot of fear in my stomach. The encounter left a scar that time has yet to heal. I never saw the dog again, but the sense of dread it brought with it lingers, a constant reminder that some things are more terrifying than we can understand.